looking around and nothing. Hi, Monica.
Amy just texted me, like she's having technology trouble.
I'm guessing
Amy just texted me,
gonna
said she's having
dial
technology
in,
trouble.
we think.
We have a IT.
It was a familiar change to see Joe's car out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where we go? All right. Ooh. Wow, dramatic. Okay, let's cap. Whoa, we have an echo.
You just fixed that.
All right, we're just going to continue. Sounds okay, much better. All right, let's call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. We'll start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll for us?
Ms. Vittori?
Here.
Ms. Nenny?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mr. Mulligan?
Here.
Mayor Condrey?
Here. Okay, this evening we have an honor of having Ms. Jerry Maples present to us some information about a Hidden Hero City and becoming a Hidden Hero City, which is a legislation item on its first reading this evening. Ms. Maples, would you like to come up and give a presentation to us?
So thank you, Mayor, for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak with you all tonight. Again, my name is Dr. Jerry Lynn Maples, and I'm honored and proud to represent the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and Middletown, or military caregivers in Ohio and beyond. I want to take a minute to thank the City of Middletown for allowing me to speak to the awareness and need of military caregiver support, your support to military and veteran caregivers in our community, and by signing on as a Hidden Hero City will allow the City of Middletown to become the 161st city community to join this movement in support of raising awareness and providing a voice to military and veteran caregivers across the state. I can't tell you how much the passing of this resolution would mean to myself and my fellow caregivers. Although our stories are different, many of our experiences and challenges are similar. Caregivers are spouses, parents, siblings, and other loved ones who voluntarily provide around-the-clock care to America's wounded warriors at home. The loved ones they care for might have physical injuries, such as the loss of limbs or other physical injuries, amputations, or invisible wounds that cannot be seen, such as post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. Caregivers have a host of responsibilities that may include managing medication, assisting in wound care, dressing, bathing, coordinating medical appointments, or providing physical and emotional support, monitoring environmental triggers, assisting with activities of daily living, and so much more. In most cases, military caregivers do do this, while assuming responsibilities in around the household, such as cooking, cleaning, child rearing, balancing career, working towards educational goals, paying bills. Caregiving is a full-time job, and I can tell you that it is mentally, physically, and emotionally draining. At this time, I'd like to share with you a video that will allow you the opportunity to learn the history of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and hear directly from some of my fellow military and veteran caregivers.
In 2011, at the World War II Memorial, we realized that Bob was having some serious health symptoms and rushed him up to Walter Reed. He was there, hospitalized for 11 months. All around us, there were wounded, ill, injured warriors. Their caregivers were young spouses, the mothers, the dads, the siblings as well. Over those 11 months, we got to know many of them very well, and they were scared. They were really worried. What's going to happen when we leave the hospital? When we're back home, we're alone. They realize they were not trained as caregivers. They are not supported. If I had been given a mission, you've seen it, go do something about it. Wake up America. Our nation's leaders must stand with America's military caregivers. Thank you. I realized we needed evidence-based research, and so I commissioned the RAND Corporation. They did a 2-year study and told us there are 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers, providing about $14 billion a year as an
My father got severely injured in Afghanistan. I was just learning how to take care of myself. Now I'm responsible for a grown adult.
On the days where my husband's having seizures, I'm of course hands-on. I have to administer medication when he's unconscious. I'm a driver, I'm a cook, I am the bill payer, all of those things, and I'm a mom. I'm a mom and John's wife.
As a caregiver, you feel like you are literally carrying a 210-pound man through the days emotionally.
Being in a room with caregivers reminds me of how they taught you to be relentless in the military.
He did his part, and now it's my turn to take over for him.
Our research tells us that a strong, well-supported caregiver is the #1 way to contribute to the health and recovery of a veteran. We've built a coalition of 300+ national, local, and regional organizations. We've vastly expanded VA services and support for caregivers.
We have more than 150 caregiver fellows representing all the 50 states and Puerto Rico. We make appointments for them on Capitol Hill with their congressmen and senators and their staffs, and they storm the Hill and they tell their story directly, and they're a great help in terms of getting legislation passed.
I am one voice among many who need consistent and compassionate help as we carry this heavy responsibility caring for our veteran.
We decided to launch the Hidden Heroes campaign to raise awareness of the enormous contributions and challenges of these caregivers. America, these are your hidden heroes. There are millions more.
We've recruited 120 cities, and we're still going across the country to mobilize, educate, and build awareness in home communities for caregivers. We've empowered countless caregivers to be a voice for themselves.
The Elizabeth Dole Foundation has put a face and a name to those who are caring for our wounded, ill, and injured service members. I know I'm not alone. It's a powerful, powerful thing.
The foundation definitely empowered me. I feel like I'm stronger than ever. Kind of like Wonder Woman.
Because of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, when people think of veterans now, many think of caregivers. How deep is the ocean or how high is the sky? That's how proud I am of my wife, Elizabeth.
The Foundation's legacy will be a shift in culture, an America where caregivers are empowered, they're appreciated, they're listened to, An America where caregivers are really woven into the very fabric of our nation's appreciation for the military. That's what I want the legacy to be.
So for me, my caregiving journey began 16 and a half years ago when my husband, Robert, an Ohio Army National Guard military police veteran, sustained injuries during service from exposure to multiple blasts during Operation Iraqi Freedom. His injuries include traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other chronic pain, sleep apnea, hearing loss, and other debilitating conditions. In 2007 and 2008, after he came close to losing his life, following losing the ability to swallow food and water, Robert was forced to end his career and leave his career behind. As Robert's wife and caregiver, it is my responsibility to help him cope with the everlasting wounds of war and advocate for his care. Like many of my fellow caregivers, I also had to ensure the security of our future financially. That is when I made the decision to seek higher ed and enrolled at Miami University. That decision led to a decade-long academic journey that resulted in my earning of a doctorate of philosophy with a major and PhD of educational studies. My academic journey allowed me to study the two signature wounds of war, post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. This also allowed me the opportunity to understand my husband's illnesses, his injuries, and become a more effective caregiver to him. During my academic journey and beyond, I have worked tirelessly to align resources for my fellow military caregivers and their families. I have worked to help others recognize that they too are caregivers. My dissertation, titled Surviving the Invisible Wounds of War as Told by the Unseen Hero, was an opportunity for me to align military and civilian communities together. As you've seen in the video, Senator Elizabeth Dole shares a similar story when her husband, Bob, was admitted to Walter Reed Army Medical Center for 11 months in 2011. She experienced firsthand the tremendous challenges facing the loved ones caring for our nation's wounded, ill, and injured warriors. This experience inspired her to establish the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and commission the RAND Corporation to conduct the first national comprehensive evidence-based study of military and veteran caregivers. This research revealed, as you saw, the understanding that there's 5.5 million military caregivers like myself in the United States. These caregivers drop everything to care for their wounded service members and veterans at home, and they are proud to do it. However, in many cases, caregivers begin their journey in total isolation without any support. At the foundation and through the Hidden Heroes campaign chaired by Tom Hanks, our goal is to shine a bright light on our nation's military caregivers by empowering them, honoring them, and providing them with the resources and support they need and deserve. And today I feel fortunate that my hometown, Middletown, has the opportunity to join Dayton, Toledo, Trotwood, and other communities across the nation in this important initiative. As a caregiver, you can go to the next slide. As a caregiver, I can tell you just how life-changing community support can be. In my role at Blue Star Families of Dayton as the chapter director that serves much of the southwestern Ohio region, I received a call early on during the onset of COVID. Financial challenges were impacting a caregiver and her husband. They had very little food. She had to decide not to eat so that her husband, a wounded and ill veteran, would not go hungry. As soon as I became aware of their situation, I called upon my community, and we had food on their table in less than 24 hours. In the week ahead, we had a plan to ensure that this situation did not happen again. A plan that included financial and employment opportunities. The needs of our military caregivers vary from state to state. from community to community. But with the support of the foundation, we can pinpoint these needs and find solutions to the challenges facing our hidden heroes right here in Ohio. Our nation's caregivers are serving our country with the same honor and duty as their loved ones, demonstrated in volunteering to defend our freedom. It is time that our communities embrace them and provide the support and recognition they deserve. On behalf of military veteran caregivers in Ohio and beyond, I hope that communities across this great state will consider passing a resolution to become a Hidden Hero city or county. And I should say, I'm trying to work on the state. I hope today will inspire you to contact your representatives and tell them you want them to support the hidden heroes in their communities. Finally, as you consider the passing of this resolution, I encourage you to review the RAND research study that I think I emailed to all of you. I encourage you to read that, reach out to your caregivers in your life, and feel free to contact me with any questions that you may have. And I also want to point out that the resolution is flexible to each community. So as a council, you are able to remove, add, design, and a program that meets Middletown community directly. The foundation has templates for you to help you with press releases and etc. As a current Dole Fellow for the state of Ohio and resident of Middletown, I am also here to assist you. Again, thank you for your support and your consideration.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this effort goes hand in hand with our Purple Heart City designation. So it's pretty cool that we have this opportunity to work with Dr. Maples and see what we can do to help our military caregivers. So thank you guys. Okay, next we have a public hearing about the designated outdoor refreshment area. Do we have a presentation that will?
I'll be presenting that. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Since 2015, the city of Middletown has had a designated outdoor refreshment area, or DORA, as it's properly referred to, that has been amended twice. Every 5 years, it is required to be renewed. We are up to that renewal period. And while we are at the renewal period, Economic Development Department is proposing expanding the DORA to include the area of New Ales Brewing on First Avenue. The expansion is approximately 3 acres of land, which would bring the DORA to a total of 103.84 acres. For your reference, cities with populations between 35,000 and less than 50,000 can have up to 320 contiguous acres in the DORA. So while we are addressing our economic development issues in this renewal, staff is recommending the continued operation of the DORA, as well as expanding it to include the New Ales Brewing area. You'll see on the map here, the current DORA boundary is in blue. They have some of the streets marked in yellow. And then on the lower right-hand corner is the orange lines, which would be the expansion area. So that our new area, if we move forward, this would be the blue area plus that orange area. It's well within the state guidelines. I believe it's best for the economic development of the area. So I ask the council consider passing that expansion as well as the renewal.
Ms. Cohen, I have a question. It's somewhat germane to this, and it's just a curiosity mostly. Can jurisdictions have more than one DORA? You mentioned contiguous acreage. Or can cities our size or larger have 2 or 3 if they had a need?
I believe you can, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, business owners, if you can think of another area you'd like to turn into a DORA, contact your elected officials and we can look into it.
And economic development is certainly willing to work with anyone who believes this would be beneficial to their business.
Great.
I can say as a business owner in the Midtown district, I've had several customers inquire about whether or not it would be possible for us to have a DORA on that part of Central that would connect to Combs Barbecue and that neighborhood. So
we're open to all ideas. The state does have particular regulations, but if people have particular concerns, we can see if it'll fit the regulations.
Sure.
Anything involving liquor control has very specific regulations, but we're happy to work through those with any citizens that would be interested.
Okay, well, with that, I'd like to open the floor for any public hearing, for any comments in favor of the renewal and expansion of the designated outdoor refreshment area. If anyone has any comments in favor of, I welcome you to come up to the dais and go ahead and speak. Come on up. If you could state your name and address for the record for us.
Sure. Steve Lewis. I came down here, I'm at 4614 Wicklow Drive. I came down for another reason, but with this, as a customer of New Ales, I just want to support it. We've talked to them, their business plan is pretty solid. Wes is quite a creative brewer. Their sales, having to go through a pandemic, were pretty incredible. So I'm kind of bouncing around. Yes, he has good beers, but at the same time, I think they're very conscientious. They stood very tall with their safety, with their distancing. I think it does nothing but help improve that part of town and get a little bit of excitement going forward. Thanks.
Do we have any other comments in favor of? Okay. With no further comments in favor of, we'll open the floor to any comments in opposition of the topic. Okay. With no comments in opposition to, then the public hearing is closed at this time. Thank you. Okay, next, that brings us to citizen comments. I have 3 cards tonight. So first we have Dr. Celeste Didlick Davis. If you can come on up to the dais and state your name and address for the record for us.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Celeste Didlick Davis. I live at 505 Garfield. I'm here on behalf of the NAACP. While I have been working with several members of the city government, it is my desire and the desire of the organization to put on record our concern about the photographs that were floating around on social media. The circle game has also been co-opted or subverted to represent some white supremacy. While the photos have been removed and we do not want to infringe on anyone's First Amendment or Second Amendment or any other amendment rights, we also have a concern of a police officer or any other duly authorized employee representing the city of Middletown and how that impacts community relations. So we'd like to have the city do some additional investigation. I have been in touch with Susan Cohen, and we have a meeting scheduled, but we want it to be on the record that these photographs have made several members of the community very uncomfortable, and even looking at HR and personnel requirements and confidentiality, it has not yet been resolved completely because, of course, we've not heard anything from the officer, we've not heard anything from the chief of police, including some of the other events where we have seen law enforcement officers and other people being involved. So again, it's not about political affiliation. It is about a perception that has been in existence in Middletown previous to Chief Burke's administration, but that we have to have more open conversations, we have to be more transparent, and we really have to get to some better reconciliation about the opposing political points and help the community be more cohesive. So the NAACP stands ready to work toward that goal, but it takes participation of the entire city government, especially the city leaders. So we would like further investigation, and we'd like some recent statistics over the last couple of months of the different kind of traffic stops that people of color have been exposed to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do you mind just confirming when the date of all of this? I did not know anything about this until right now, so.
Well, to be very honest, I have the pictures here, but I cannot tell you. They were sent to me last week. I don't know how long they were up. I have been in conversation or communication with Susan. And so the photos have been taken down, but I will leave the photos for you. And they are disturbing. But again, we're not trying to impinge on anyone's First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, but we also talk about as a duly authorized officer of the police department and representative of the city of Middletown, it's really not okay for there not to be a more public response about addressing that we are anti-supremacy, that we respect the rights of all people, and that we are continuing to work. We can disagree, but we still have to do it in a way that is transparent and authentic. So they're here, and maybe someone else can tell you when they appeared, but I became aware of it last week.
Okay, that helps. I was just wondering, timing-wise, the Citizens Advisory Board, that would obviously be a very good topic we could raise there, but that wasn't a timely.
January 25th was when the matter was first brought to my attention, and we've had ongoing conversations since then.
Okay, and I'll just note, because the Citizens Advisory Board is a great avenue for these kinds of discussions, but it's not the end-all be-all, because it only meets once every 2 months. So in that case, I think that meeting was within a few days of that, so perhaps didn't work out for that topic. But I'm just putting that out there, that I would love to use that particular advisory board for people to come and talk and have those conversations. However, the regularity of that is not a great one, and I think that we can definitely look into this and figure out what, I honestly have no idea what we're talking about right now. So I'd like to have some time to look into it. I'm sure my council members will.
As I say, I'm not expecting immediate action. I'm here to put it on the record, to request action. But in response to what you just said, I think that it is significant, while the Citizens Advisory Board is still being reorganized and there's still some stability that is necessary for that organization, that it not be swept to that committee because it's bigger than the Citizens Advisory Board.
Absolutely understand that.
I just wanted to be on the record that that's not what we're asking. Anybody else? Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, next I have Mr. Steve Lewis.
Back again. My name is Steve Lewis. I'm at 4614 Wicklow Drive. I come down here as a member of the Park Board and Tree Commission, and wanted to just bring up a few things, observations. I go off the fact of what the mayor did several months ago, and I applaud the city as far as getting a little tighter with what was going on with the boards. I want to say personally, I've been involved with the city since '93, starting with the Keep Middletown Beautiful, Della Ewalt, Steve Murphy, then moving on to raising children, then getting back involved and doing many park projects, and then getting involved with the Tree and Park Board Commission. With that said, we have never had anything but professionalism as far as our city employee liaison. They have been impeccable. They keep great notes. We try and stay on course where we're going and what direction. Direction being one thing that I have a little bit of a concern about. With that said, in the last couple months, I did and have seen some things go on, and I'm kind of scratching my head. The thing that really stood out the most to me is that we had a 10-year member, the president of the park board, kind of abruptly told that he was no longer the president and he had run his term. Now, I don't know all the specifics. I'm sure some of the administration knows that. But I just felt that the way Jason was asked and how it was presented was pretty pitiful. You got a guy here that is, it was certainly just a good taxpayer, was wanting to be involved, wants to be involved in his community. And I'm sure it was a slip up. Again, I'm not here at all to throw anyone under the bus, but I just hope that at some point we might be able to review or look at how you're asking members to either leave or come on board, because if I gather this correctly, you're recommending them on these boards and commissions. So I would think that the liaison of the city council would be involved in that. At this point, we're having a new member come in. We're already 2 meetings, him not being there, or that person not being there. So I'm getting a little bit concerned on that. These are things that go on. But with that said, something that was brought up in last night's meeting was a potential of having non-voting liaisons involved, potentially in our board. I don't know if that's going on other boards. I guess what I'm concerned about is that we go back to the original structure of the park board. The park board is mentioned in the charter. I think it's one of the few boards.
I hate to cut you off, especially when we're talking about this topic. We have a 3-minute time. So, but I would like to actually make a comment, if you don't mind, about this, because I think it's a very good point.
Sure.
I think that council has definitely gotten a little bit more, paid better attention to how we structure our boards to make sure they're doing the right things. But I am personally not aware of how we do communicate to the people who are no longer here. I know Ms. Skink is working on that, but I see a great deal of improvement we could make in that. And perhaps that's something I could take on as the mayor. I'm happy to do that, so that if we have situations where someone has served a long period on a board or commission, and the policy is 2 terms, and then if someone else has applied to the board or commission, that we will take that new individual. But if no one has, then we would allow someone to do a 3rd term. So that's the reasoning, and that's in the city charter, is how we're supposed to do that. But it's the communication piece that I understand could use a lot of work. So
yeah, and what I planned on doing was sending an email to our city council liaison, and also to Scott Tedish, as far as other observations, and some of it being fine-tuning this. And we've got some things in the charter, and to me, none of it's making sense because it's not being utilized. And if it's not being utilized, then it's a waste of time, in my opinion. We need to fine-tune it.
great. I'd love to have a more in-depth conversation with you about that, and definitely we'll work towards better communications, because we're very appreciative of every person who's volunteering on those boards and commissions.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the 3rd citizen comment I have this evening is from Ms. Dora Bronston. We haven't had citizen comments in so long, I forgot to be timing people. Thank you, Susan.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Dora Bronston, 4817 Earl Avenue here in Middletown. It's great to see you, Mayor, and my colleagues, and Ms. Susan and Amy Skank, who I love very dearly. I'm here for 2 reasons tonight. Number one, I hadn't planned, but I would love to support the resolution from Dr. Jerry. And for the hidden heroes, which you all know that I'm one of those, and I'm still recovering, I'm still exhausted from that situation as a caregiver. And it's wonderful. I'm great to hear that things are moving in that direction for veterans here in Middletown. And I know Lafayette would love it too. So thank you so much for that, and I support Resolution 2021-04. Also, on the second item that I'm concerned about is in the support of Dr. Celeste Davis, and I saw the disturbing captions of one of our police officers holding an AK rifle. I don't even know the names of them. And also the white supremacy signal with the hand sign. And if you haven't seen them, you'll see them when she sends the pictures around. Very disturbing to me. Based on my background, I'm a Heinz 57 person. I have mixed background. There's a lot going on in our nation. The police officers and our wonderful firemen know that I'm very supportive of Chief Van Arsdale when he was here, and Muterspaw, and of course now we have Chief Burke. But as a Citizen Advisory Board member, also along with the mayor, those are things that we do discuss, not the only thing and the only way, the only path for this discussion to be held. But those are issues that we need to address right away, because those things don't exist here, and I've not foreseen them. I've never seen them here. All of our confidential things that were taken care of behind the scenes, that things we took care of, race issues or otherwise, were taken care of. And I have all the respect of our officers, because they swore an oath of their character and integrity and the trust of our community. And those kinds of pictures on Facebook or otherwise, do not reflect what we want to see in our police officers. As a matter of fact, it will go against what we trust, and we'll start to find distrust. And we don't want things to happen here in Middletown like other cities, and we all know, we see it on TV. And so I'm here to share that concern. So those are the two things I came for. Number one was a great, positive, hooray for the resolution. And the other one is to show my concern and make sure our police officers adhere to what we've taught them over the years. And so I would like to be a part of the public hearing or whatever discussion, if you all would allow me to be there. Right now, I'm working in a capacity of the secretary for the state of Ohio NAACP.
Timer's up, Dora.
And I'm done.
Okay, thank you. And I do know that our police chief takes issues like this very seriously, and I'm sure he is looking into it. Jim, if you get a chance, if there is some sort of an email chain or something floating around about it, perhaps it would be a good idea to make council aware of that so that we can better understand the issue and address it moving forward.
I will do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's see, we're now to our council comments. Ms. Nenny, would you like to start us off this evening?
Sure. I guess I would like to start by thanking Dr. Maples for being here and making her presentation. I think that was very moving and certainly tells the story of some unsung heroes. And then I would also like to thank Dr. Davis and Dr. Bronston. We have a lot of very highly educated women here representing Middletown and talking to us about some really important things. So thank you for coming out and making us aware of those issues. And then I would also just like to thank city staff and City Manager Palaniuk for their long hours of work and presentation for council over the past weekend when we had our not retreat, but our planning session. I appreciate just all the hard work that went into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
I think Monica said it well. I'll just say I look forward to learning more about what our doctors just talked about later this week. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll add my thanks to Dr. Maples for coming and look forward to supporting that resolution regarding the hidden heroes. Certainly some people that are taking care of some very incredible public servants in the military. To Mr. Lewis's comments regarding the boards and commissions, I did have a couple of board members who were termed out contact me after the start of the year, and they were also a little bit surprised that they were being asked to step down from their position. And I apologize to them, and I hate to use COVID as an excuse, but I think it's one thing where we as a council probably communicated inadequately, either to Ms. Skank, and then in turn this concept of a two-term limit wasn't properly communicated to those volunteers on the board. So it in no way, I assured them that it in no way reflected our displeasure with the time and effort that they had put into their service, and obviously we wanted them to continue to participate, whether it's as a volunteer or non-board member, and certainly in the future as opportunities come up, they can come back. But I just wanted to clarify that, so I'm happy that Steve Lewis came and expressed that, so I know as a council we can do better in the future just to communicate that to our volunteers who do give a lot. I also add my thanks to city staff for putting together a very robust agenda at our strategic planning session on Friday and Saturday. We really have some bold initiatives underway, and look forward to working with you all to make those a reality. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Vittori.
I think she is also having some computer problems still.
Frozen? She looks frozen. Amy, if you can hear us, you can unmute yourself and speak. Otherwise, we will go ahead and move on.
She sent me a message that said, just got kicked off, but trying to come back.
Okay. We can, if she has comments to make, as we move on, we can have her add those at that time, if that works for everyone. I also wanted to add very, very impressive strategic planning session this weekend from our public safety to our economic development, everything really top notch, and people are doing really, really great things in the city building, and there's a lot of exciting things to come in Middletown. So as a council member, I'm excited, but as a citizen, I'm even more excited. And I would like to take on the challenge, Ms. Skink, of creating a smart Excel spreadsheet that helps us better track our board members and when their terms expire, because I'm an engineer and love that kind of stuff. So I would be happy to if we get in a list of all those board members and when they start it, and just one master list that we have, because it's kind of all over the place on each of them, and we're having to kind of work each different board and commission together, but we probably need a bigger picture that would help us look at it all. That way.
I'll be glad to do that. We have it in a list. It's not an Excel, it's not an Excel format, but we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to put some effort
I
in there
think-
and make it turn color when we got to communicate to people and do all sorts of good
Well,
things.
I think that the issue too has been that we had some people who we had more interest in certain boards this time than we had had in the past. So it was not uncommon for people to serve their 2 terms and then to stay because no one else had applied. Right, so rather than have vacancies, people stayed on longer. But we had so many applications and so many people who actually did not get an appointment to any board or commission because we had more applications than we had spots to fill. So I think that has also played into this. So what people have come to know as the norm did not play out that way this time because we actually had a lot of applications for boards and commissions, and so that 2-term, kicked in. So
I'd like to see us, as it becomes that time of the year, if there are individuals who are going to term out, that we proactively reach out to them and say, hey, just so you know, if you're interested in applying again, if anyone else applies, they will get preference, just so that their expectations are set.
And that's where that was not well communicated.
Right.
And sometimes, though, we go right up until November and no one's applied, and then someone does, and so, it kind of kicks it back again. So it's we're going to do better going forward, certainly.
Great, thank you so much. And that's all I have this evening. Mr. Pelnick, City Manager Report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. We have 2 presentations this evening that we'd like to provide during the City Manager's Report. The first of those is we'd like to give you an update on the Lakeside Redirection Project, and our Assistant Director of Public Works, Nikita Lancaster, is going to do that.
I won't take much time. I just wanted to make you all aware of some of our public outreach efforts for this project. If you want to slide.
Nikita, if you want, you can remove your mask.
So the Lakeside Redirect Project is part of our consent decree. It's going to be a large construction project, and there's a map on the slide here showing the areas that are going to be impacted by that. It's a large pump station. We have 2,100 linear feet of gravity sewer, 5,000 feet of force main. So a lot of residents will be impacted. The public education part of this is a consent decree requirement, and with as many residents as will be impacted by this, it's also just good practice. So we have developed a web page and door hangers. So we'll show you a couple screenshots of the web page. So we've branded this as Middletown Current. The web page will remain active for the duration of the consent decree. So all of the projects will ultimately be on here. So right now we just have the Lakeside Redirect Project. And there's information about the project. So we've got frequently asked questions, so residents can go and get a little bit more information about some of the things that might be on their mind. If you want to go to the next, we've got a project progress map. So not all of the work's happening all at once, and residents can come here to see where we're at, what's coming up next, so they can kind of feel out what areas are going to be impacted. And then as we move through the construction areas, we have door hangers. So we'll hang these on residents' doors so that if they have questions, it'll direct them to the website. It'll also direct them to a designated email account where they can email us, and I'll be responding to that. They can ask questions, get more information if they're curious. So here's one of the ones that we have, just trying to get people excited about the project and the investment we're making in the community here. And one of the other ones is a little bit more playful, showing, you know, some construction activity and all that kind of stuff. So if you are asking questions, I just want to make you guys aware of the resources that are out there for the project.
Great, thank you so much.
And secondly, we have a presentation that deals with our action items numbered 3 and 4 this evening, specific to an update we want to provide on our efforts to be proactive with regard to homelessness in the community. With the pandemic going on, with the fact that we have recently received a lot of CARES Act money, and there's a lot of concern over some of the economic impacts to our citizens, one of the things that we've been very cognizant of is the potential to deal with homelessness as a result. So this year we've tried to be quite proactive, and as a result there are several items, and Susan would like to provide you an update on specifically those items.
Thank you. In the spirit of trying to be very proactive and making sure we have the ability to address concerns that have happened in the past and those might happen in the future, and this year, particularly with the Shalom Network not operating this winter, we try to take a stance to address 2 main concerns. The first is how do we help address missing shelter beds from Shalom's absence? And also, second is there a more effective way to help deal with homelessness in the community? You'll find 2 pieces of legislation, it's number 3 and number 4 for your consideration this evening. The first is to do some appropriations of funds out of our CARES Act allocation to help address the issue. And then the fourth that will be to enter into a MOU for a pilot program with One City for Recovery to address putting social workers on the front lines of addressing some of our homelessness concerns. First, we look at the shelter bed question. I've been working extensively with the Butler County Homeless Coalition to try and look at some county and local resources to address the need for shelter beds. The Homeless Coalition is a group that grabs together officials from Hamilton, Middletown, as well as the county, and some of the nonprofit and service providers in the area to try and effectively group services together when appropriate. Through that system, we were able to work out a triage system to help get people hooked in with the best resources available and try and give our first responders an ability to triage situations and get people from the field to the most appropriate resources. So our first responders will be looking to see if people are veterans, if they're able for group shelter, are they appropriate for group shelter, are they families in need of private shelter, or people that are unwilling to go to shelter. And as we work through the triage continuum, the idea is to utilize the least intrusive or expensive methods necessary to get them to the correct services. For our shelter beds, we'll be utilizing the expanded Hope House beds that opened this year. Also, we have the ability to utilize night shelter and warming locations at Surf City and Hamilton when necessary. When unable to shelter in groups, there are limited options and availability for officers to provide short-term housing assistance at a Middletown hotel. This is limited availability and will provide only an important piece of the puzzle. We encounter families and those are unable to group shelter and still have to get out of the elements. That leaves us to when we have people that are unwilling to shelter or unable to go to the shelter environment. This is when we'll be looking at our transitional housing teams and those doing field outreach to reach out to people and provide services when possible. And that leads me to the idea with that field outreach. What happens in the second question? Is there more that we could do to help address the homelessness concern? We're proposing this year a 1-year pilot program with One City for Recovery. You will note in your packets, they had some documentation from the One City for Recovery folks. It did say 6 months. That was an original draft. We are looking at 1 year at this time, just to make sure everyone's understanding of what's going on. One City for Recovery has worked with our first responders for the heroin response team or the quick response team, depending on which lingo you've used. They have been working directly with our first responders to help go out on overdose calls and make sure that people that are able and willing to get treatment resources are able to get into those resources. They've had incredible success, and in fact, in speaking with some of their social workers that work in Middletown, they're now using our model, and the Middletown model is teaching in national trainings on how to handle this type of an issue. So in looking to how we might utilize that type of an environment to address some of our homeless concerns, Chief Burke and I met with the folks at One City for Recovery about amping up their services in Middletown to spend a guaranteed amount of time addressing particularly homelessness concerns. So they came back with a proposal that you viewed tonight, and we'll be working into a formal MOU that provides for some additional services of social workers in the field and directly working with our community-oriented policing unit that Chief Burke has been working on, and provides resources to help them get people into more permanent housing. It also provides them some utilization of the One City for Recovery hotline where they can be hooked up with resources and provide resources for those social workers to get people through the systematic barriers to getting into more permanent housing. I thought it was really interesting as I started to delve into this issue that, we as a city have been dealing with the getting overnight shelter, but we've really not been looking at what are some of the things we could do to help people get into more permanent housing. So we were speaking, for example, with the social workers, and they said one problem they have is getting IDs for people. It costs money, it requires documentation, it requires some resources. Okay, I may not be able to solve everyone's problems, but can we start to chip away at some of those kind of problems that will help people get along their way and get into a more stable environment? So being able to utilize these resources to learn those problems, learn how we could help fix them, and also help citizens along the way to get into a more stable environment. We're hoping by using this system for a one-year pilot program, it gives us enough time to get some data together about how people ended up in Middletown, how they ended up homeless, and how we can best help them moving forward. It'll also provide some accountability that they'll have to come back to the city and say, okay, here's some metrics of what we did over the year, what kind of services we provided and what we found out in the field, so that we have the ability to reevaluate if this is working, if it's not working, if we need to change it, and give us some real data points to try and address issues moving forward. And that we would have to review that after the year period. I know from speaking with Chief Burke, I think he would agree with me that the ladies that do this work are really excited about being able to amp up, and I appreciate their passion that they would bring to it. And I think it would be a great opportunity for us to really live that idea that is coming out in the news and things these days about putting more social workers out in the field with police officers and trying to address issues in a different way. And it would put us in the forefront of really trying that out and seeing if it would help our citizens.
And if there are any questions, we would certainly be willing to entertain those. Otherwise, that would conclude my manager's report.
How do we see the interaction with the police department specifically playing out? Does that, are they is it at an email, like we emailed this company, or how does that?
I don't know if you'd be able to best address that given the current way they interact with you and the HRT team.
We started the HRT team when Heritage Summit was here, and you go up here and talk.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it catches it on the microphone better. Thank you.
We started out with the HRT team with Dave at the fire department, and that's how we met Victoria and Lindsay. We meet on Wednesdays, and they go out to the prior overdoses the week prior, and they do a follow-ups with them to see if they want treatment, see if there's anything they can get them, such as placement in a rehab or something like that. And they've been very successful. So they touch base with everyone that has overdosed the week prior or the week prior to that. When it first started, we had a very long list. It's now, shorter list because overdoses obviously are going down. So, but they work with the officers and just change the mindset of the officers. When this first started, the officers are like, what are we doing? And now when the officers have an individual out there, you know who they call? They call Victoria and Lindsay, part of the HRT team, and say, hey, we have a vet over here that's homeless. Is there a place for him? And with, a little bit of work, they were able to place him in a home and get him the treatment he needed. So it's been very successful, and I think this program, I know it's going to be a trial basis, but I think they'll have very good success just because they've already networking with a lot of the individuals that are homeless that are obviously have some alcohol and drug abuse.
Okay. And this is probably not a Burt question, but a funding for this, how does the contract work? Is it a one lump sum? Is it a per visit?
We have proposed a 1-year quarterly payment in equal payments and ahead of time. And if there's a cancellation period, and we would do a rebate if we canceled during the time period.
So it's unlimited resources for that period of time? Or?
No, it would be $50,000 total in equal quarterly payments.
For what? Like we pay $50,000 for?
So you'd be getting the access to the One City for Recovery hotline and their services. It would be ramping up the social work services directly in town, so their time, and then also providing some resources for those social workers to do things like get IDs, get people necessary supplies to try and eliminate some of those barriers to housing. So each quarter we would split that 50,000 in quarters and pay it in advance for that quarter.
Okay, and then is there like line items, like those items are coming out of the 50,000, or I don't, I hear a number, but I don't understand, I guess, how that number is broken up or accounted for. Or...
So in the documentation that they sent you, it sets out, there's a little chart of exactly how they're breaking down that $50,000. So we're agreeing that that's what that subject will cost. We'll pay it in advance in the quarter, and then they'll keep their documentation about how that works, particularly for the time and materials matters. But that most of it's going to go to materials would be the amount that you're accounting for. So we would pay in advance, and then they'd be responsible for tracking it and making sure it meets what their proposal is.
And Susan, is this a service that this group or these individuals are already providing to other cities?
I don't believe
this is all
I don't believe so. I think this is a novel idea.
Okay.
They've provided our quick response team, our camera response team services, but this is a new idea for them, and I think a new idea for this area.
What have we been hearing over the last 14 months from this was primarily impacting downtown, from our businesses? Are we still getting the number of calls we were getting? Or, I'm seeing nods.
It's tough to say because there are no businesses open down there. I could say, I could say firsthand, but there's, it's.
What was it? What would you say, Chief?
Close at 9 businesses, so we're not seeing the activity. We're still getting several calls a day, but probably not as much as we used to, just because there's no place to go downtown anymore, because it's closed.
We do still receive pretty consistent calls on some of the camps, people camping in different areas, and some of the concerns related to that, as opposed to congregation downtown efforts.
Would you say that has increased while the presence downtown has decreased in sort of equal amounts?
Yeah, I would definitely say the amount of camps have increased. They go to different, like, wooded areas throughout the city. But I'd say the number of camps increased, and that's why we would use this organization, because with the COP unit, they would actually go to the camps and make relationships and contacts with these individuals and see if they need treatment, see if they need, addiction help or mental health help. And that's the best thing to do, is create those relationships with these individuals. And by doing that, I really think they can find long-term placement for them.
But Chief, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask how we have addressed those camps previously. What has been our approach up until now about those camps?
Up till now, to be honest with you, we just break up the camps, and we just
break them up.
We go in there and say you have to leave. They collect their belongings. They go on their way. We may check them for warrants, and then they're back out somewhere else. If we had the HRT, if we had Lindsay, it was HRT day. They may talk to them, get their information. But we basically just took down the camps and sent them on their way.
And how long before that same camp is reset up again?
Probably not that camp, but they might go somewhere else. So it won't be long before they go to another location. So we got to think outside the box, and this is something new that we're going to try. That, look, if maybe instead of just breaking up the camps, that we find a way to build relationships with them with this new program. Maybe we'll find long-term solution and get them the help they need. Not everybody that's homeless, a lot of people homeless want to be homeless for one reason or another, but we want to reach those people that have an addiction, that have mental health, that need help. Had something, Joe?
Right. The issue would be then, a couple of concerns, but if we can accomplish this already with our community policing efforts, why would we need to do anything more?
Well, we have the officers, but we don't have the networking that they have with the different hospitals, with the VA, with these ladies have connections for the treatment facilities, because that's why they work in treatment and mental health. So they can make a call and say, hey, we have a house, or we have housing over here in Dayton, we have housing in Cincinnati. We don't have that ability to do that as an officer. We don't have those contacts all over Dayton, Cincinnati, and surrounding areas for placement for individuals.
Doesn't Hope House have those connections? I mean, why wouldn't we be using Hope House?
Hope House won't take everybody. Hope House, if you have a warrant or if you have an addiction or something, Hope House won't take that. That's what we're trying to find. A lot of these individuals, 80-some% of these individuals have alcohol, drug addiction, or they have mental health. The Hope House won't take them if they're addicted or have mental health. So then we have to find other placement for them. These individuals have the connections and the networking that we need to find long-term treatment. Just like the individual that I talked about that went to the VA that we found at Smith Park.
Without this system in place.
Yeah, without this, because we called these ladies. That's why we got it. We called Lindsay and Victoria, and Lindsay and Victoria came in, and they were able to find placement for them. But we would have never been able to find it without their help.
And you would agree, though, that the comprehensive study investigation that was done in October of 19, I believe the results of that were shared with council in the fall of 19 at several meetings, identified maybe 16 to 17 homeless persons per week in Middletown.
Yeah, I would say that number's risen a little bit. Middletown has a lot of services for individuals. It seems like people come from all over to Middletown because of the services we provide.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah, so I think that's some of it. So people come here for that purpose. But we're just trying to think outside the box. I mean, the things we've been doing in the past, we see the same homeless people over and over again. But if we can get one person that treatment, get them long-term treatment, and maybe we, put them on the right path for success.
Well, to me, and this is not directed toward you, Chief, but I mean, how much more does the city of Middletown have to do? I mean, we have borne a very heavy burden when it comes to subsidizing affordable housing. 8 times what HUD thinks that it should be. HUD thinks it ought to be 2% of your housing stock. At one point in the recent past, we were at 16%. If you put in Section 8 vouchers, Butler Metro Housing Authority units, Habitat for Humanity, et cetera, I mean, we're doing all that we can, more than we should be, with regard to affordable housing for everyone.
Absolutely.
And now we want to build another infrastructure to potentially attract additional homeless persons to get them out of that system. I don't wish homelessness on anyone, and I don't want this to come across as cold-hearted, but at some point we have to look out for the greater good, the 48,000 people, many of whom are paying taxes, and they pay their property taxes and their water bills on time. They just want a clean, safe city. They don't want to be a magnet for poverty. And that's what's just so frustrating about this proposal. And then procedurally, you apparently have been working on this for weeks or months. We get it the Friday before it's to be passed for emergency legislation. So I take exception to that we have to vote up or down on this with maybe a couple business days to review it, one day to ask questions, kick it around. So, I mean, I can't support this in its current form. I don't know that I want to be involved with this group for a year. I mean, to me, we should have some tangible results within 3 or 4 months. So, again, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but I just have some procedural concerns, and then the content of the legislation also.
I think this program it's new, and what we want to do is have them. I don't want to send these individuals out, these females out to homeless camps and stuff like that without an officer. So the officer would go with them, and our goal is to find them treatment. If that treatment's in Dayton, Hamilton, Cincinnati, our goal is to find them treatment placement for their addiction, so they're no longer homeless. Give them job training so they're not homeless. That doesn't mean they stay in Middletown. We're just trying to find the people that need this help that receive it, is all we're trying to do. So that's going to be, going out into the field, making those relationships. That's what we're trying to do. Because we get calls on homeless all the time, camps here, camps there. We go there, we run them. What do we do with them? We send them on their way. We have no place for them. So that's why by having this program, I think we can take it a step further. And it may work, it may not. But, if it's a temporary thing, that's something you can talk to Susan about if we want to do shorter. But we've had really good success with the HRT team, the quick response team now, and they've modeled it for other cities. So that has been very successful. So,
well, and again, the city has financially supported the Hope House expansion.
Yep.
That was to provide additional beds. deal with the issue of homelessness in the downtown corridor, where we're trying to build business and educational. And now it's like, well, that's not enough. We got to do more. And it's like, man, for 16 or 17 people, we're spending a lot of resources attacking this, hitting the whack-a-mole, just wherever it pops up. And I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Chief, what is the allocation of resources to engage these two ladies as it stands right now? What is?
Well, right now their services
that
is paid
arrangement?
through another company. Susan probably has more information on that. And they only come in for a few hours, 1 day a week. And then with COVID, obviously, we've been doing different things, try to reduce contact with anyone with them. But obviously that's, opening up, things are opening up a little bit more, so they're getting more active. But right now their services are paid from a contract, and that's who I think Susan worked with to contract this. We've had such good success with them, and the mindset of the officers changing. When I first started this, the officer said, now we got to put them in jail. Now it's like, hey, let's call Lindsay or Victoria. Let's find a place for them. Let's see if we can get them somewhere and see if we can help them. So that's kind of.
And they asked us for more resources, or we offered more resources?
We said, hey, look, we're trying to think outside the box. What can we do with these homeless camps? What can we do with these homeless individuals that are coming downtown in different areas? Instead of just breaking up the camps and just sending them on their way that we have to deal with again and again and again, let's try to find a long-term solution, and that's what we were trying to do. So Susan touched base with Lindsay and Victoria. We had a few meetings, and this is kind of where we proposed where we're going with it, and to see if this may work and may not. But we have to do something different than we're doing.
Because I'm just curious why this has to be an emergency issue, why it's emergency legislation and why we haven't had more time to.
I don't know.
Especially if they're not engaging people because of COVID right now. If we pass this, are they going to engage the
There are
homeless?
just so many questions.
Okay, we certainly can reevaluate that if you'd like to consider it as the first reading this evening. We certainly can do that.
I think that would at least help.
I think some of the concern was getting the resources out to the community now, given that it is supposed to be 0 this weekend.
But I did just hear from Burke that they're not engaging the homeless right now because of COVID. So would that change?
Some of the examples, like the transportation dollars to get people to shelters and things, would attempt to be used this weekend as we're getting people to the temperature zone.
So could we separate perhaps some of this? Are there two topics we're talking about that we could?
You have two items, number 3, which is an allocation of actual funds, and then number 4 is the contract with the one city, so
Right.
they're two entirely separate.
So is that something where maybe we need to talk further about the allocation of funds, and if that's something that council feels comfortable moving forward with, and then if the contract is something separate that we could perhaps.
I guess I would ask specifically too on the allocation, if you wanted to allocate the 5,000 and the 10,000, which are the more immediate things for transportation and or short-term housing if it's necessary in a very cold environment, and then leave the 50,000 to be dealt with later as well as the contract later, that would be fine. Yeah, that would be fine.
So I have a question. If we do that, doesn't emergency legislation have to be in front of council for them to pass it?
Yes, but they're not going to be considering it as an emergency.
Oh, even the 5,000, they're not considering it.
That part is in front of them. What we'd be doing is deleting the one part for the 50,000. So what is in front of them would be. We delete one single line.
Take away the 50.
Right, so it would be in front of
We
them.
have what we need.
Can we first find from council, is council even interested in emergency passage of the 5,000 and 10,000? Because if we're not, then we need to kind of talk about that as well. And
Somebody define the short-term housing for me. Was that what somebody was talking about? That the ladies have some relationships?
No, there are going to be so the idea of we're triaging people to go to different areas. First, if you're a veteran, we're going to try and hook you up with Veterans Affairs. Then we'll try and get people into group shelter environments. There are a percentage of people that are just not going to be appropriate for group shelter. And that could be families, kids. And we are asking for $10,000 to allocate to some short-term assistance to get those people that absolutely do not have options into short-term hotel stays here in Middletown.
And I imagine these are our funds, so it's kind of pay as you go. And these are just kind of estimates as to what we might need for a quarter.
Yeah, these are funds that we originally set aside out of CARES Act monies that would ultimately go to, in some way, deal with homelessness. And it amounts to a certain number of nights at a negotiated rate.
This isn't a contractual service that we're entering. The only contractual
No.
obligation is the 50.
It is literally like having a voucher available for so many nights, so that it's entirely up to the police department to determine when or if they would ever be used. And we don't know that we would use them all, but it would allow them the opportunity that they know it's available.
And it's again, if the other options are not appropriate or available.
I do share Mr. Mulligan's concerns about becoming a magnet, and if we pass something that says we're free hotel rooms for the homeless, and I'm just being obviously extreme on that. However, at the same time, I recognize these are CARES Act funds that are being proposed in this manner because Shalom is not open and there are fewer resources available for these people. So I do feel like it would be appropriate to use that money for them. I also want to be very careful that we don't make it a habit to do that, because it does, it will have that effect. And as much as I want to be able to help these people, we have to be able to help ourselves first in the end.
Well, I guess my question would be what the alternatives are. I mean, I think the triage approach is prudent. I think the transportation piece seems most effective, since we can just then use other resources. We're just connecting people. I guess the question is the hotel piece, which I agree with you, Nicole, could be kind of misinterpreted across the community and within the homeless community. But I guess my question to Chief Burke would be what the alternatives are. If we do nothing, I mean, what happens to those people this weekend?
Thanks for all your help on this.
So if we come across the homeless and obviously, they don't have any warrants or anything like that, we can't find a place for them, then they're basically on their own. We have no place for them. So then they just wander the street. If somebody calls and they're on Central Avenue or something, we have them move and carry on their way, and then they just end somewhere else. There's really no alternative. Our goal working with, Victoria and Lindsay is to get them the treatment they need to be successful. That was the whole point behind that. We haven't even used the hotels or anything like that. We've called the place Surf City in Hamilton. We've taken a few people down there. They do bring them back the next day, so we've had success doing that. The gathering in the mornings from 9 to 6 has been great. They've been giving hot drinks, lunch, food like that, so that's been a great service for us. But once nighttime hits is when we really struggle for my 3 to 11 and midnight officers, if they do come across people.
In the past, they went to Shalom?
Yes, in the past, we'd go to Shalom and they would drop them off. Well, we switched it to the PD. They would drop off anywhere from 15 to 20 people in the morning. But with that being closed, then we just have different calls in different areas of the city.
I'd like to add as well that the sole reason that this came to be this year was we're still in a pandemic. There's a lot of people suffering a lot of economic hardship that we didn't see before. Our concern was that put other people into situations of homelessness, particularly maybe even families or children. So there has to be something within that triage that says, is there some opportunity to take somebody? But that's always going to be up to the police department. They make that decision. There is no free ride here that someone comes along and says, oh, we get a free stay somewhere. That happens at the third or fourth step in a triage, that they've looked at every possible other alternative, and then finally they make the decision that that's the only place left. So that is anything but a magnet.
I was going to suggest, actually what was suggested either by the mayor or by Susan, that potentially we could break this apart, because most of my questions were around the pilot program and the length and, getting it on a Friday afternoon for a Tuesday meeting. And I agree with kind of what everybody's saying about the hotel situation, but I'm more comfortable with items with the 5,000 and the 10,000 than I am with the 50,000 at this point. And maybe we should have another conversation on the 50, and I could support the 5 and the 10.
So when we get to those items of legislation, I'll ask if there's a motion to amend those pieces of legislation to make the appropriate changes, if that works for you, Madam Mayor.
Sure. Should we go ahead and talk about that, the contract, however, because it'll just punt it to the next meeting if we leave it as a first reading and don't alter anything, right?
I'm happy to take whatever notes you would like to give me this evening, or if you'd like to provide them to me this week, I'm happy to run them down before we get to the
First of all, I'd like to applaud the idea of trying to do something to address the addiction problem that is creating a lot of the homeless problem. And obviously, it's something that our police department needs some help with. It's not their job to help people get off drugs. So I appreciate thinking outside the box. I would be interested in seeing a pilot program that was not a whole year. If we were really wanting to do a pilot program, maybe we do something shorter, because I can see the value in it, but at the same time, do we know it's really... And I also understand we need something long enough that we can measure it. So I get that as well. And I don't know if council has ideas on, would you want to do a 6-month pilot program? If this goes forward tonight as is, can we make changes before voting the next time? I can't remember how that works.
Yes, if it's a first reading, we can make amendments and bring it back either for another first reading as a different piece of legislation, or we can bring it back for a second reading with some amendments.
Okay, so maybe we can mull that about then between now and the next meeting, and if we're still able to make changes for the next one.
Certainly.
Does that sound okay?
And I'm happy to take anyone's notes as they happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be curious in seeing a shorter pilot program and what that would look like cost-wise and how that might play out.
For me, I'd like to, that looks like a 6-month program to me, and that gets us through the cold months, through the winter, and we can see what effect it has and maybe go from there,
I'd also like to hear about, calls for service and how many we've had in the last, because this really came up October, November of 19, and we got a lot of information at that point and just haven't heard a lot since. So not redoing all that, but just what you have without,
in the current environment, which
Certainly.
is different now.
Certainly.
Thank you, everyone, for some good conversations. I know it's an important topic, and it's one that's woven itself into our community very deeply. So it's a good one to have good conversations about. Okay, so how do we move forward on this? We've got the pieces, we'll deal with it when we get to the legislation items, right?
As I'm reading the legislation, Your Honor, I'd be happy to ask for a motion to amend it to or
Sounds good.
what we believe to be most appropriate at this time. And you would pass that motion to amend, and then we would go forward.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further comments before we move on? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please present the consent agenda for us?
For your consideration, we have the approval of the city council minutes from November 3rd, 2020, to confirm the reinstatement of Elena Romaine to the position of dispatcher in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, to confirm the appointments of Deborah Wells to the position of zoning administrator in the Planning Division, and Amber Martin to the position of dispatcher in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, to confirm the promotional appointments of Todd Abel to the position of equipment operator in the Department of Public Works and Utilities, Division of Street Maintenance, and Christopher Klug to the position of fire lieutenant, Todd Steinbrenner to the position of fire captain, and David Hurst to the position of deputy chief in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. To receive and file the Board and Commission minutes of the Library Board of November 17th, 2020, and the Board of Health from December 8th, 2020. To receive and file an oath of office for Alexis Manning, Connor Beal, and Jennifer Stout, and to receive and file the final assessments for the 2020 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program.
Move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
For consideration this evening on the motion agenda to approve a contract with various vendors for nuisance abatement services of vacant and city-owned properties and private properties that have failed to abide by the city's codified ordinances within the city of Middletown. Possum Holler Designs, LLC, $53,395.63. Results by Carroll, LLC, $67,601.88. Cam's Lawn Care, $67,886.83, and Julie's Lawn Care for $68,583.16.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Second item for a motion is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with In Situ Form Technologies to complete the rehabilitation of approximately 792 linear feet of the North Interceptor in an amount not to exceed $498,333.
So moved for adoption.
Second?
Was that you? I'm sorry.
Yes, it was me. Does that help?
With the mask, it's hard to tell.
And Ms. Gann, could you please call the roll for us?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Fattori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Cohen, will you be presenting legislation?
Yes. We do have 5 matters asking to consider as emergency. So ask for motion to waive charter requirements and 2 readings, 30 days to enactment regarding resolution R 2021-01, R 2021-02, R 2021-03, ordinance O 2021-06, and O 2021-11.
I move to waive the charter provision requiring readings on 2 separate days and the previously read resolutions and ordinances be declared emergencies and read one time only.
Second.
Ms. Gann, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Fattori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
First matter will be resolution R 2021-01, a resolution requesting the auditor of Butler County to advance to the treasurer of the city of Middletown, Ohio, taxes assessed and collected for and on behalf of the city of Middletown and declaring an emergency.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Do you have any comments on this one? Okay, Ms. Gann, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Fattori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
The second matter this evening is resolution R 2021-02, our final resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation for the 2021 urban paving program to resurface Verity Parkway, or State Route 73, between Germantown Road and the Northern Corporation limit, and declaring an emergency.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments? Okay, Ms. Gann, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Fattori?
Yes.
Prior to looking at resolution R 2021-03, I'd ask if there's a motion to amend section 2 from $65,000 allocated to $15,000 allocated. That would remove the $50,000 in question that we had discussed previously.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments on this one?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, there are actually 2 components to this particular item. The first part of this is asking for a supplemental appropriation to the 2021 budget in the amount of $170,000 from the general fund. And the reason for this is frankly that we had expected the Department of Housing and Urban Development to have released quite some time ago the $170,000 that was granted to us in CARES Act Small Business Economic Development grants, those forgivable loans that become grants. We have waited a very long time as their bureaucracy has been incapable of simply providing us the funds that they've promised. They keep telling us it's a day away or 2 days away, whatever. But in the meantime, we have small businesses that we've actually awarded grants to that we haven't been able to make these awards to. So we're asking you to simply front the $170,000 for a very short period of time from our general fund reserve, and then we will get the reimbursement from HUD once they ultimately work through their bureaucracy. And we didn't expect to have to actually ask for this, but we continued to hear from them that they would have it done. They have not had it done, at least as this afternoon. So we would ask that that be approved. And then the second part of this is that which we discussed relative to homelessness with the $15,000.
Would it be possible to just let council know when those funds from HUD do come in so we can?
Absolutely. And we are really hoping it's tomorrow, but we will definitely let you know.
I've been in contact with our HUD rep about daily trying to get this matter through, and we apologize that it's not been done at this point in time.
Is there any way that they could wiggle their way out of this and not give us the money? What, there's a 100% guarantee that we're going to get it?
I do not have any concerns that we are not going to get the money. With dealing with HUD, it is very oriented on when their computer system opens and making sure the computer system matches exactly. And there have been problems with their computer system interacting with our coalition with the county and getting everything set. We believe, and we've been told by our HUD rep that that was done today, but I have yet to receive any formal confirmation. And so we want to make sure that above and beyond we're taking care of these small businesses and then dealing with HUD.
And they did make a formal award, so we're not at all concerned. The money won't come here, it's just timing.
Is there a reason why these were coupled together, the homeless effort and the small business grant?
When they were both appropriations under emergency, they were grouped together for ease of processing. There's no reason other than that.
Well, it'd be nice if we could separate them.
We also, quite honestly, were imagining we may have to pull the one because HUD might have told us in the meantime that it was no longer, and then it would have been separate, so, again, timing.
Okay, any other comments?
Well, it's just hard to support the emergency hotel voucher component of this. It's just not a program, I don't think, that was fully vetted through council, kind of came out of nowhere, and doesn't really achieve, the long-term goals of what, as a city we're trying to work towards, so for that reason.
Definitely see that one, perhaps we knew it was gonna get cold. If we could have thought a little bit more in advance on that and not made that one emergency either, knowing we do have CARES Act funding and knowing we're gonna be in a pandemic at this time. I do agree it could have not made its way. I do feel, however, it is going to be very cold, and we do have the CARES Act funding, and I personally feel like we should, but I completely understand where Mr. Mulligan's coming from as well on this.
Can we break these apart and make it easier for them so that it's two entirely separate items?
Yeah, that's what I was
The HUD money and the other one?
Yes. We would need a renumbered. You know what the next number would be on this?
Yes. Okay. The next number would be Resolution R 2021-06.
So we had asked about a motion to amend it to 15,000. That was never voted on. So I would like to strike that motion if I may. And
we did vote on that motion, I think.
You would ask for comments and Mr. Palanek started speaking?
We had a first and a second, no.
Only on the motion to
Amend.
amend.
But
Okay.
no vote.
There was no
We just went ahead and talked about the whole thing.
Yes.
Okay.
There was no vote on that. So
Okay.
I'd ask if we could if we'll withdraw that at this point in time. And we can amend Resolution R 2021-03 to include only Section 1 and strike Section 2.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Skank, you please call the roll.
When you're ready.
When you're ready, yes.
Got a lot of writing here. Okay, Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Okay, now it's separate, right? We've got,
So we've just voted on the motion to strike that. I'd ask if the body would consider Resolution R 2021-06, which would strike Section 1 and just list Section 2 as $15,000 of allotted money towards homelessness response. So that would effectively split Section 2 into its own resolution, R 2021-06.
are we voting on that resolution right now, or are we voting on making it its own resolution?
What you are doing is voting to accept that new resolution unto itself, and then we would vote on each one of these separately, whether or not to adopt.
So we're not voting to adopt Resolution
What you would be voting on in this
2021-06,
matter is
only to
simply
establish
split
it. Okay, so moved.
Second.
And Ms. Skank, when you get a moment, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Okay, with both those split, I would ask, we have first piece to consider, unless there's further discussion, would be Resolution R 2021-03, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio for the period ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency for the Community Development Act 1974 fund. This would be what you have listed as Section 1, $170,000 allocated to the repayment of the small business loans Mr. Palanick discussed.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
The next matter we would have is Resolution R 2021-06. This is the split version of this resolution. A resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of
I'm
Butler
sorry,
and Warren.
Susan. Do we want to read the other resolution for the one city in as a first reading?
If we could, do we want to address the appropriations first for this matter, and then we'll address the one city issue that's
Okay, I
the
gotcha.
next item?
I see. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I thought you were going to the next one.
No, this
I'm
would
sorry.
be the updated, the
Thank you.
updated split.
Okay.
So it'll be Resolution R 2021-06, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties in Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2021, declaring an emergency for the general fund. This would be Section 2 at an amount of $15,000.
And this would be the transportation, the short-term housing.
Yes, sir.
We were thinking this will probably be one time only. Hopefully, the pandemic's over next year and we don't have this need.
Yes, sir.
That is our hope, absolutely.
And does this have an expiration for that funding? So if we don't use it by a certain date, it will no longer be distributed?
It'll be appropriated through the end of December 31st, 2021.
So for the whole year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that I do have a problem with, actually, because I think if we're doing it for the purposes of the cold weather, then I think we need to put a term on its end use. Otherwise, it is being used exactly as the magnet that we're fearing it could be.
The appropriations, it's my understanding, Mr. Burt, would need to be done through the year.
Correct. So you would be appropriating money to be spent in 2021. You can deal with the contract issues separately.
So the contracts that with, if we were to enter into the contract with the hotel, it would be for that cold weather time period, not that the appropriation has to go through the entire year.
So we are doing a contract with the hotel. I thought we weren't doing a contract.
No, there's a contract in which they're providing it at a set rate, but we only use it if the police department determine there is somebody that should go there and they make the decision, and at that point, we would get billed for that specific individual for that specific night. So we have a contract that says X rate per evening. That's the contract. There's no contract that commits us to $10,000, doesn't commit us to anything, commits us to zero. We only get billed if it's actually utilized. So this is an appropriation that says you could have a way to pay for it by having this appropriation.
So do you guys have a way that we could go about approving something that does get at what we're trying to do, which is keep people out of the freezing temperatures, but assures that we're not putting people in the hotels during the...
That would be a matter of
Quarter of a month.
trusting our police department and or the people that are responsible for using the funding.
Could we not lower the $10,000 to $3,000? Make it a third, since we have roughly 9.5 months to go in the year? Or?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how we came to obviously the 10,000. Maybe you were thinking that was only for 2 months and...
It was a specific number of nights so that we would know that that was available if it came to need, because people have economic hardship and we had no idea what we might be facing in a pandemic.
Yeah, understand that it was definitely a guessing game for sure. I would just personally, if I'm going to vote for this, I would ask that our staff considers council's wish to use this for times when individuals would be put in physical hardship conditions because of the temperature and weather outside, and leave it at that from my perspective. If anyone from council wants to add anything, you're more than welcome.
I don't disagree. I agree with the mayor.
With an effort to use this money conservatively and to use the vouchers conservatively and appropriately, which obviously we would have to trust in staff to do.
And that is very much the point of having the discussion about the triage approach, that we're really looking at this as the last resort of saying you're not appropriate for other options. It is getting to a point where it is dangerous outside, and this is the option of last resort. That's the point of that triage system, is to try and make sure we've utilized everything that we have available to us up to this point in time.
I think it would be great to see maybe like an update, whether it be monthly or quarterly, because I think the triage idea, especially with the transportation, not that this is a pilot program, but it is something we can get data and learn from. So I think it'd be great for council to be able to see how this is being effectuated, either monthly or quarterly.
Certainly can.
I mean, this kind of homelessness update in the setting of the council meeting has been very insightful and helpful, and I think that if we can continue that conversation at council meetings, that we can at least be informed and aware of what's going on and how the money is being spent.
Certainly can.
I would also ask not to throw too much on the plate, but if our first responders do run across any homeless who reference the fact that they heard that this program existed in Middletown, I would be very curious to know those instances.
So I believe we would have item 2021-06 with the $15,000 allotment for the body.
Okay, we have made a motion, put it on the table, and seconded it. At this point, we're just voting. Is that correct?
No, it's been read. I need
It's
a
only been
motion.
read.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Yeah, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Gang, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
No.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes. I'd like to add that we actually never read that in as emergency legislation because we did that at the beginning. And it was not a resolution at that point.
When I read the title, I read off of the other one, which would have indicated as emergency, I believe.
Okay, but when we made the one single motion to waive the charter provisions for, and then we listed everyone.
You were very correct, because we did not have the new number at that point in time.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and do that.
I move to waive the charter provision regarding reading on 2 separate days and to declare Resolution 2021-06 an emergency measure and read only one time.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
We don't have to re-vote on that, do we?
No.
Whew, all right. Thank you, everyone, for sitting through all that. I believe we're ready for ordinance 2021-10 for a first reading.
The next matter, we would ask for a motion to amend that to a first reading.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
No.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Okay, so we have now made the amendment that is considered as a first reading. Is ordinance O-2021-10, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding with One City for Recovery and consider it as a first reading. I've taken those notes. If there's anything additional, I'd be happy to take those, or you can reach out to me this week.
Sounds good, thank you.
Item number 5 is ordinance O-2021-06, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an extension of contracts for grounds maintenance for 2021 and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments on this one? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
The next matter is ordinance O-2021-11, an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the contract with Rinka for master planning services related to the Town Mall Galleria redevelopment project and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments on this one?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, you're aware that we have developed a three-way partnership between the owner of the Town Mall Galleria, the Warren County Port Authority, and the city to engage a redevelopment plan for land use to look at the properties associated with the Town Mall Galleria being redeveloped ultimately as a town center. And as we've been going through that process with our land use planners, RINCA, it was determined by the partners that there is a parcel of land immediately north and west to the mall property that is 5.9 acres, it's vacant, and it's on the market. And we all felt that if we were going to be comprehensively redeveloping and planning this program, that it might be appropriate to include that acreage within the overall plan so that ultimately it would be consistent in its development as it moves forward with the rest of it. And so RINCA agreed that they would add that to the process. The cost is $15,900. $7,300 of that is dedicated to the Phase A conceptual development of planning, and then $8,600 is for the actual schematic designs as part of Phase 2. And this would come out of the city's fiscal year 2021 economic development budget for professional services.
When do we expect them to be wrapping up?
We had said from the beginning, once they started, it would be about a 15-week process. Because we're adding this in, this may add maybe 2 to 3 weeks to it. But if you go kind of back to when we started, if you figure 15, maybe with 2 to 3 more. So it's about an 18-week process. So we're pretty well into it. We expect the folks from RINCA to be back in again, I think, next week. They're going to have quite a bit of stuff for us and that we'll be seeing. So we'll kind of take it from there.
Great. Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Susan, I have a question. I'm sorry. I did not realize which ordinance 2021-06 was, and I did have questions about that. And I know I voted on it. Is there any way I could still ask a question that is associated with that?
About the underlying ordinance or about the process?
The actual ordinance itself and what we're approving.
That was the yes. feel free.
We voted on it just prior to this, and I completely.
Sure.
So my question about it is our use of enterprise funds for this, and I understand I did get a response from Jim and appreciate that. 55% of the contracts are being used, or of the contracts is being paid for out of enterprise funds, which I understand. He said the stormwater fund is used for the required mowing around stormwater basins, which I completely understand that, along with thoroughfares and medians. And I'm concerned, I don't understand how the thoroughfares and medians are stormwater related. From what I understand, I've been trying to research as much as possible, that the grass clippings are actually one of the biggest contributors to stormwater clogging. And so I'm just having a hard time figuring out how our enterprise funds are being used to cover those costs.
Yeah, the best possible means to deal with stormwater effectively in the most natural way is natural leaching through grass. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, if we had medians that were all concrete, they would be very easy to maintain, and they would cause much more difficulty, obviously, with stormwater. So the fact is that we purposefully have grassed medians. Not only they look better, but they're much better for actively managing stormwater, as are the areas of the thoroughfares that we keep grassed as a result of that. So it's very appropriate and done throughout the country that stormwater funds fund those, because in fact that's a big part of managing stormwater, the normal leaching through the groundwater by maintaining grassed areas. So that would be the answer for that. As far as clippings, yeah, that is an issue, but obviously since we're managing that, we want to make certain that we're not putting those clippings there. Now, if somebody in the public is doing that, we would try to stop them and encourage them not to. But when we're responsible for doing that, I would certainly hope we are not doing that. So.
Oh, it's absolutely being done on those properties for sure. So
well,
we need
then
to talk
I
to the
will
contractor.
have a discussion with our folks, and if they're contracted on our behalf, I guess we're going to have to do a better job.
Okay. And one thing we may want to consider in doing my research today, I saw a lot of communities going to like whether it be wild flowers or the taller rooted items that actually help seep the water even more, and then we may not have to contract out for the cutting of the grass, and then saving our water bills a little bit as a result as well. Just an option we could look into. I'm sure there's pluses and minuses of both, but it would definitely be something I'd be interested in seeing. I think it's happening a lot, and the state is doing a lot more of that than grass specifically for that exact reason. They don't have to cut it.
I'd support that as well, if you need a second.
Thank you. I would be
Absolute-
interested in hearing maybe what staff had, not this moment, obviously, but having a look into it and seeing if we could cut down on some costs in the future.
We will, and I know I've been involved in actually some sort of green infrastructure in places where it was done as a pilot program. Is more effective. Some people complain about the look of it because it looks like things grown wild effectively, and they don't like the fact that it's not manicured. But it is, more effective. It's more green. It does handle it better. So I think there's a balance probably. Some areas it works a lot better than others.
Yep, I could.
Other areas people would certainly want to see probably a more manicured lawn, but, we'll have that discussion.
Okay.
I think we do some of that out by, on 122 and at the interstate. I believe there's some areas there that are wild and using that process.
Thank you. I appreciate the backup to move forward.
I believe we are at number 7, ordinance number O-2021-07, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for the parcel located at 812 South Main Street from R4 Attached Residential District to R3 HD Medium Density Residential District with a Historic District overlay. It's here for a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second. Any comments on this? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Satori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Next matter is ordinance O-2021-08, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for the parcels located at 500, 502, and 504 at the Alameda from R3 Medium Density Residential District to R3 HD Medium Density Residential District with a Historic District overlay. Here for a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second. Ms. Gank, any comments? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Satori.
Yes.
Item number 9 is ordinance O-2021-09, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for a parcel located at the intersection of Bexley Drive and Ellen Drive from B1 Neighborhood Business District to R3 Medium Density Residential District. Here for a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second. Any comments on this one? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Satori.
Yes.
Item number 10 this evening is ordinance O-2021-12, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an extension of the current contract with A.E. David Company for the purchase of fire uniforms. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Palanick, did you want to present this one?
Yeah, this is at a not-to-exceed cost of $45,000. It's our normal yearly purchase of fire uniforms on behalf of the firefighters. It's a one-year extension of a 3-year contract holding the same prices as was actually originally bid in 2017.
Any comments or questions on that one before we move forward? Okay, thank you.
Next matter will be number 11, ordinance O-2021-13, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for a small business economic development grant with Miss Jade's Soul Food LLC. Here for our first reading.
Mr. Palanick.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is actually the last of our 2020 assistance, but we couldn't quite get it done in last year, so it's made it into this year. Small Business Economic Development Assistance Grant for Ms. Jade's Soul Food LLC in the amount of $10,000 in order to do a brick and mortar startup restaurant at 6 South Broad Street from where they have been previously at 105 Central in the Pendleton's Arts Center, which I think is more it's takeout only. It would support fire suppression equipment, convection oven, deep fryer, signage, website, uniforms, and inventory.
Is this taking over an existing kitchen?
Yes, it is.
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, next please.
Number 12 is ordinance number 2021-14, an ordinance renewing the designated outdoor refreshment area and authorizing an expansion of the boundary thereof. Here for our first reading. This is what the public hearing was about earlier.
Any additional comments about this? Any comments or questions in the meantime? Okay, next one, please. Thank you.
Number 13 is Resolution R 2021-04, a resolution in support of the city of Middletown, Ohio, becoming a Hidden Heroes city in support of military and veteran caregivers. Here for our first reading.
Any other comments from staff or council?
Last but not least is Resolution R 2021-05, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio for the period ending December 31st, 2021, resolving the police grant fund. Here for our first reading.
Great, Mr. Palaniuk, do you have comments about this?
I do. This was a U.S. Department of Justice JAG grant for the police department that came in 2020 in the amount of $8,751 for the specific purchase of tasers. We were not able to make that purchase in that year, so we were reappropriating the monies into this budget year so that purchase can occur.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, with that, see, we will adjourn until February 16th at 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers. And until then, blue skies over Middletown.